the live 2 hour deal. I may want to do that real quick. Hang on. Are
Yeah,
you
can go
already?
ahead.
Are you
Yeah,
live on your deal?
we are live, my friend. But you could record.
Hang
We're
on,
gonna
so-
edit some of this. We're gonna edit this too later.
I think he I think he disappeared.
Hey, where's Marcus?
Hang on.
Hang on.
I'm here.
All right.
Okay, I'm not gonna share.
All right. So, for everybody who's watching live out there, I want to introduce the show. Obviously, my name's Dr. Garth Davis, and I deal a lot with weight loss surgery, and nutrition. And we are, as you know, starting to do these shows where we talk about these topics in a streaming fashion, and also we will then edit and put it out there for people to see. And I got a great show tonight. I am really excited about the show. I have one of my good buddies from many, many years ago, Dr. Jason Powers. Say hi, Jace.
Hi, Jace.
So Dr. Powers is a good buddy of mine. We go way back, and he has an interesting story, which hopefully he'll share with us. And Jason is really one of the foremost experts on addiction and addiction medicine. He has served as chief medical officer. What's the company that you're chief medical officer of now?
Now it's called Positive Recovery Centers.
Positive Recovery Centers. And what do you guys do there?
So we actually apply the new science of happiness, positive psychology, to the addictive space. So we believe that if people's lives are more rewarding than the promise of a relapse, the chances are higher they're going to stay sober. And we don't just pay lip service to like taking care of our people either. So, you know, we really consider our staff as much a client as any client is one of my patients. So it's
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a science to happiness?
Yeah, positive psychology, dude. I got my master's in it at Penn, remember? 2012, I think.
I do vaguely remember, but so because I talk a lot, I don't know, Jason, you know, but I'm constantly fighting about science versus, you know, alternative medicine and not having actual research. So there is research behind positive psychology and addiction?
Yes, absolutely. You totally don't listen to me when I talk to you. I told you have to go do this program. It's not self-help. It's actually double-blind placebo-controlled trials. You would like it.
So because everyone out there is we hear these things like positive psychology. We hear this all the time. What is positive psychology? Like, what do you tell you? You're not telling your patient just be happy, right?
No. Well, when most people hear happy, they think it's the online emotional experience. But there's a lot more to that. Remember Aristotle's eudaimonia or eudaimonia? It's well-being. So happiness is found in positivity, which is positive emotions like joy, contentment. This is what most people think is happiness, but that's just the P. It's also found in ERMA. So engagement is when you use your character strengths, and everybody has 24, they're universal character strengths. When you engage them in such a fashion that they're challenged in the right amount where you enter that state of flow, it's optimal human action. R stands for relationships. And like by far the best predictor of happiness in the literature is the depth and breadth of one's relationships. So PRM is meaning and purpose. This is where spirituality is. This is where faith is. But you don't have to have faith. Even atheists, agnostics have sacred people and places, and their lives are full of meaning. There may not be meaning in life, but there may not be meaning to life, but there's meaning in life. So it's a broad thing. And then A is achievement. And it's not achievement for God glory. I'm thinking of the conquistadors. So it's not achievement for like winning for the sake of winning, but it's actually the peace of mind knowing you exerted your best effort in pursuing meaningful goals. So that's where you find human happiness. Oh yeah, it's outstanding. It's work of Carol Dweck and all these other people, like mindset.
Okay. Take everybody back because they don't know your story. Right. Because I want you to tell everybody your story because I find it obviously it's fascinating. It was scary for me at times, but I want you to go back to your story. But I also want you to reflect in that story. Were you unhappy during those? Does unhappiness drive or depression? Is that driving addiction, or does addiction drive depression?
So both. So like. Everybody should learn before they die what they're running from and to and why, right? And so, happiness is the only thing that people pursue for itself. People pursue other things in order to be happy. You either move towards something positive or away from something negative. So yeah, man, I have ADHD pretty bad and wasn't medicated. And kids that have ADD that are medicated don't have a higher risk of addiction. But back, when we grew up, there was no ADD, there was a belt and like shame. So my nickname in preschool was Mr. Impatient. And man, it was torture because I'm not great at sitting still. But people with ADD, we were advantageous to those of you who weren't, because we would always notice like not just a squirrel, but like the tiger. We'd be like, hey, what's that? So anyway, there's so many of us because it is advantageous for the whole. But be that as it may, yeah. So born in Houston, friends with Garth since 7th grade. Just reminiscing on how lucky I was to have him in my life when we were younger, up through I don't know when, but like we don't see each other so much anymore, which is okay because like I don't, when we see each other, it's like no time has passed. Great guy. Right, exactly. I mean, so many memories. Okay, so yeah, like being unhappy, absolutely, because people are just going to try to be happy, and if you go about it the wrong way, like me, you can develop addiction. And I had ADHD, like I said, depression. There's like so many things, there was so much trauma in my house growing up. It was just so bad. And, naturally, like not naturally, but like I come by it honestly, like it's in my genes heavy. Food was my first addiction. Absolutely. Like I used to hide candy. When I was a kid, I wanted to work at 7-Eleven. Because that's where the candy was, right? I mean, that was like not high.
You were a pizza delivery boy too,
dude. No, I'm talking like 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, yeah, man. Like sugar was like crack, and you know how the brain operates. So it's like my drug of choice is more. It really doesn't matter what it is: food, drugs, alcohol, sex. You got it. Yeah, I didn't do heroin or cocaine. That's just because I was always afraid those would kill me. I knew like I knew my tendency, and I just didn't want to take the short route, right? I wanted the slow, painful route for death. But so it started
to me growing up when I was with you, I never thought of you as unhappy or ADHD, or is this something you were hiding? Are people that are addicts, first of all, did you know that you may be prone to addiction at an early age? Do people that are addicts know that early?
Well, I had no clue, right? I mean, I had no idea. I didn't know what addiction was till I was a patient in rehab. So no, at that age, absolutely not. Everybody in adolescence goes through social anxiety and all these other things. I mean, the happiest time of my childhood and growing up was when we were all together, right? Because I had like a stable pod, and a lot of us don't. A lot of patients I treat don't have that. So if you don't have like a stable home environment and you don't have stable friends, it's isolating and it's really bad. So, I mean, I was thriving, I feel like, when we were together a lot of the times. But I mean, Garth, I was stoned so much. Like I was stoned almost daily. Like, yeah, I can't believe you didn't know that. And then sort of like in high school, everything was great. And then junior year and senior year, it was like, I tanked, man. I was like isolating. My grades went bad. I stopped playing sports. And that was too much. That was too much weed. We get to college. Remember my freshman year, I was like basically nocturnal, right? I like never went out during the day. Got a 2.0, which was like so hard to bring up if you're trying to get in med school. So sophomore year, I kind of got my shit together and then just basically drank like college kids do. Got in med school, and you have to be sober a huge part of med school to make it through, because it is ridiculously hard, especially for someone with ADD. Because I would read something, and forget what I just read, just like that. And
medical school? Were you medicated in medical school?
No, absolutely not. And I didn't. In medical school, I would only like party. Do you guys hear the feedback? Is it me or is it?
Just you.
I think it's just you.
Okay, let me try this.
If you've got earphones, it may not feedback. Now we can't hear you.
want to bring in Marcus real quick?
Let me see. Jace, can you hear? Can you hear us, Jace? Oh, we can't hear you now at all.
Unmute mic.
All right, try again. I think we.
Can't unmute. No, he can't unmute. Their mic isn't connected.
Your mic is not connected, it says. Oh, man, you were just getting into some good stuff.
You want to introduce Marcus?
Okay, Jeff, can you work on his mic? Can you get?
I can't do anything. He's on his end. He did something.
What did you just do, Jason, to turn off your mic? We heard you perfectly. Do you have a?
It's not letting. Okay, so we'll bring him back.
Okay, he's getting. While Jason's getting earphones, let's bring on Marcus. So, Marcus, you with me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me give a little bit of a introduction to Marcus. So Marcus and I met.
Hey, Doc. Hey, Doc. Don't touch your face because there's a short, and whatever mic you're using, and it's every time you touch your face.
Oh, okay.
That's what the noise he was hearing.
Oh, okay. We will fix that. Okay, so Marcus and I go way back. When was it, Marcus, that you first came to see me in the office?
Like 5 years ago, I think, something like that. Right?
Oh, really? I thought it was even longer.
Maybe longer. 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe 7.
So Marcus, I mean, and I want to get Jason's perspective on this too, but I somewhat look at, and Marcus, I want your perspective, obviously. I sometimes look at obesity as an addiction. And so when I see a patient who comes to me and they've been overweight, you were upwards close to 500 pounds when I first saw you, and it had a lap band. And I see someone with that kind of a situation, I start to think back about, why do we have obesity to begin with? Like, a lot of people, and I'm sure Marcus, through your life, were you overweight all your life?
Yeah, pretty much from about probably 10, 11 years old. I was, you could just start telling the weight was kind of going to be a problem. Both my parents were pretty big themselves. My mom, my dad wasn't quite as, he didn't really have a problem that I did or mom did, but it was kind of genetically. So it's kind of like a, what do you call it? You thought it was your life sentence, of like, hey, I'm just going to be big,
Yeah.
So, and, we're from the South. So my dad was a preacher, and just, it all revolved around food. He was a gourmet chef, and, and that's what he did it like as his hobby. And, it was just kind of a, hey, I'm just going to be big, better deal with it. That's kind of how, that's how it kind of got out of control. That's how the thought process went.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, we look at the statistics with obesity, and we look back. I mean, obesity in some ways is almost a normal. Our bodies are made to hold on to food. Our bodies are made to drive us to eat, because back in the old, thousands of years ago when we were evolving during times of feast or famine. So we grew this huge stomach that could take a lot of food. We grew a propensity towards wanting to eat high calorie foods. And then, of course, you get into an environment where you grow up around a family who's cooking all the time. You've got these genes that predispose you to want that food, and that food is plenty. There's no winter starvation. And so at what point did you feel like it was getting out of control?
Probably 15, 16 years old. I was like, uh-oh, this is not going to be good. I'm just going to be big, and then it, so I couldn't play a lot in high school. I was more into music and drama and singing. So, I was getting my, I guess, the feeling of being successful through music and singing. And, I was winning all kind of awards, and I was trying to do the music deal. But then, then you get into the music scene, and then you realize I don't look anything like the people that are, superstars. How is that going to work? It was before The Voice and the chairs and, all the stuff like that. It wasn't about the talent. It was about the look, And so, just decided, hey, I'm just going to try to make a difference in this world. I became a youth pastor, went to Bible college, that kind of thing. And, still just big, got married when I was 21, been married 28 years, 27 years, something like that. I think 28 years, 20, yeah, 26 years. I don't know. It's one of those years, but a long
You better
time,
figure
right?
that out, buddy.
Yeah. I asked my wife before the deal. I was like, "Hey, how many years?" She's like, "You tell me." I was like, "Oh God, this is not going to be good if you listen." but but I took her to Italy for my 25th, so I'm good there, right?
You're
um,
good there.
yeah. So just married big. Uh, Started having kids. Had 4 kids, and started my first company with like 5 grand. Never really had a drinking problem at all. Never. I did not take a drink of alcohol till I was 23, 24 years old, and didn't really like it. You didn't have it, but I love Cokes. I love Sprites, and I loved sugar. I mean, it was like he said, it was crack. I was definitely addict to eating. I mean, then I started making a little bit of money. And I didn't go to college. I hated school. Never could be a medical doctor at all. If it takes what you guys did, I'm not doing that. But uh, kind of started my first company with just a little bit of money, and then all of a sudden now I got into a little bit of money, and then it wasn't like Red Lobster was the place to go. Then it was like Ibiza, and then it was Uchi and all the crazy places that you could really start thinking of. And I was VIP at all the places in town. Could bump a table anytime I wanted to come in, and started drinking big bottles of wine. And then it really became where I started kind of like, okay, I'm going to now personify the Godfather of this whatever. I'm going to pay for my fun. We're going to have friends, but I couldn't do anything. I literally couldn't tie my shoes. Couldn't had to take my shoe off to put it up on the counter to tie it. I would plan my days when I was working not to get out of the truck. Never did a damn thing. I mean, never did nothing. So came to you, and I can remember. Hey, if I'm gonna have the surgery, I'm gonna go find the best guy in the world. And he wasn't available, and I found you. And so I
Touche.
came to I came to your place, and here's this guy who's talking about plants all of a sudden, and I don't remember, but you tightened my band. Remember the first time, that you tightened my band up. Like, let's try that again. So I went to Ibiza, and I said, Charles, give me a veggie plate. And Charles loaded me up with all those olive oil, vegetables, that he so loved to do. And got stuck immediately and came back to you like in a panic. Hey, I can't, nothing's going down. You undid it. And then it was like, hey, if you want to do it, let's look at that, keep trying to do it. Let's kind of reconvene. I think I took a few months off from even, talking to you, maybe more, almost a year, maybe. And then I came back to you and said, hey, let's go, let's roll. Um, you know, that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, and I remember clearly, and I love it when a patient is very all or nothing. Though I want to get to Jason in a second to kind of discuss this phenomena. Hey, Jason, you there? Are you back? Okay, I can hear you. All right.
I can't hear him. I can't hear him.
We heard you for a second, and then you went off. Oh
Did
my
he
God, Jason!
Does he need to rejoin the deal? Can he get out of the room and then rejoin? I think that would join up his mic.
Is that what he needs, Jeff?
It's worth a shot.
Hey, Jason, try to hang up and then rejoin. All right. So while we're waiting for Jason, so then we did your gastric bypass, and you did super well after that.
Yes, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I came in and I was like, hey, how much weight did I lose? I mean, I lost like 30 pounds on the pre-op. Like it was something crazy. But the thing about it is I would thought that I was trading, this life that I used to have of greatness and coolness. And so I remember like the 2 weeks before I had planned the whole week out. I mean, I ate at Killins, I had Kobe A5, I had every major meal you could have. I flew friends in from work, all across the country to have my last meal with me, gave instructions to all my buddies. Hey, if I die, do this for me, do this, do that, all those things. And, came into surgery, and it was a real solemn. And, the thing about it is like up to that point, some of the pictures you see of me with my sons in football uniforms, some of those were the last pictures that I had planned on taking if I had died. You know what I'm saying?
You
My
thought you were going
wife,
to die from surgery
well,
or from just
I just didn't know. I was like, I have no idea. Here, I'm 500 pounds, going under the knife with, with a preceding, operation that was, done by one of your friends, and I just didn't know. I had no idea. So, I remember I remember in the surgery, in the pre-op, and the song "Sailing" was playing, "Sailing," Christopher
Mhm.
Cross, and so that's one of my songs, my workout songs I listen to. But um, the my wife said, "Hey, we didn't get pictures." I was like, "No pictures,
Wait,
no
stop for a
pictures."
second. You work out to the song "Sailing"?
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes I do. Yeah, really. Yeah,
Go over
there's
your
some.
playlist. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I have a very eclectic workout playlist. They're all
yeah,
memories.
sailing would be
They're all
something I
they're
might
all
listen to in a bathtub. But
Yeah, but they're all memories of
yeah,
just spots that just changed my life. But Mandy took two pictures, and that's one of the pictures that I think you're showing right there, of because I didn't want any pictures taken of me at all. I was like, I'm an embarrassment. I may be super successful in the pipeline world of supplies and making shit happen on a pipeline, but as far as me, I don't want him. I don't want a memory of that. Just remember me of how. Remember that I started a company of $5,000 and grew it to $18 million. That would be a
yeah,
memory, kids, that you guys need to have. Not that Dad couldn't control how much he ate and he's 500 pounds.
right.
Um, so so it's a different kind of addiction. I didn't even never smell marijuana until for forever. Some of the stuff that people talk about, like going through college and drinking, and I never dealt with that. I dealt with food,
But well, tell
and
me this: like after the surgery, after you had the bypass, what did it give you? Like, what? How did it help you?
I don't know. Whenever you go in surgery and then you don't know it's going to be a life changing moment, I can't remember everything you told me, other than uh, you know, I think I don't know, but you basically said, hey, this is going to give you about 75 to 100 pounds head start, and you have to lose close to 200. You have to almost lose over double that. So in 2 years you could be back where you're at, and you're going to have a year of happiness, a year of fun, but then it's just going to come back. And I don't know, some of those things that happened during that time, because it's just, it's so emotional. I came home from the surgery, and I just remember crying on my chair, just crying. I was just boohooing. Well, 2 days after surgery, you tell
Boo-hooing
me,
out of like loss of
oh,
your
just
old life? Or?
no, just sobbing that it came to this.
Hmm,
Here I am.
right.
I'm rocked by it. Came to this, kids. I only did this for y'all. I didn't do it for me, and I'm sorry, because it was so miserable, Philip.
So you did
Yeah,
the surgery, you felt like a failure, and the doing the
yeah,
surgery felt like a failure.
yeah. It's like you couldn't do it on your own. That kind of thing. So it was kind of like a rock bottom moment for me. But you told me, hey, and I talk about this in some of the stuff when I'm doing my talks. But you said, hey, in my mind, when I woke up from anesthesia, I wasn't 500 pounds anymore. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't be. And it was kind of like I went into the witness protection program for fat people, you know, and I was still fat, but I wasn't fat. And I was going to pretend I wasn't fat. And I could remember every shortcut that I knew about, I wouldn't do. I remember bending down and tying my shoe. You know what I'm saying? I remember parking in the back of the parking lot so I could walk all the way to the front of to the grocery store. I remember, just taking the longest way. Then you were like, hey, try to get 10,000 steps a day. And, those kind of things just started echoing in me, that, hey, you know what? I got to pretend I'm going to be different. And, you know, I think at that point, that's kind of where things just started clicking. And then it was kind of like, hey, I've never done what I'm doing. This is kind of fun. And you said impossible's a dare. That was one of the things that you said to me, that I kind of built my whole premise of who Marcus became over the last 4 years or 5 years, however long it's been. And
Right.
so it's like, hey, if you can't think it, if you can think it, you can do it. And just try to do it. Just keep doing it until it happens. If you fail, who cares? You're just going to keep going. So it was kind of like this whole rebirthing of a new chapter. I didn't drink anything but water for a year, at all. I can remember calling you. Maybe it was like 9 or 10 months, because I remember calling you like, hey, can I have a glass of wine? You're like, no. I was like, please. Then I think I called you. Probably 10 times about that one thing, and you were like, yes, one glass. And that was like way, way, way into it. I mean, I had done some monumental things. A year from being 500 pounds, I did an Olympic triathlon with you, and in
Yeah,
Miami,
Marcus and I
and
went to Miami and we did the Olympic try, and that was an exciting time for me to see you do that, to see your excitement about it. But there's something, Jason, are you there? Do we have Jason again?
You need to. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you,
we
man.
can, yay!
All right.
What a beautiful, melodious voice. So, Jason, have you heard a little bit about Marcus's story? So, all his life overweight, wasn't really into drugs and alcohol. A little bit later, as he started getting very overweight, started drinking. We did the surgery. Now, I see this a lot. There were some studies, I think you and I talked about it on your podcast, where they did functional MRIs of the brain. And if you look at someone who suffers with obesity, their brain has a dopamine receptor deficit in the arcuate nucleus, very similar to addicts, alcohol addiction, cocaine addicts. How much do you think an addiction? So Marcus was like, I wasn't interested in drugs. I was just interested in food. Is that a true physiologic addiction, do you think? Or is that his upbringing? Is it genetics? Is it all of it?
Yeah, I think it's all of it. I don't think our genes sort of solidify us in concrete. Otherwise, there'd be no room for free will. And I believe people can grow and improve. So not only do the brains look the same on imaging, but especially alcoholics, the dopamine receptor, there's a dopamine deficiency, sort of like an improper mechanism of using the main neurotransmitter that makes us feel satiated and rewarded and impairs a sort of survival kind of truth, so that midbrain keeps going. The same thing happens alcoholics with sugar. So you get the exact same response. And I've been practicing addiction medicine almost 18 years. There's always been at least one obesity surgery patient inpatient for the whole time.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Because so what happens is like, Marcus, I'm curious, how old were you when you had your obesity surgery?
It was 4 years ago, right? 4 years ago, Doc. 5 years ago, somewhere around there.
4 or 5 years ago.
So
Okay.
I'm 48.
Oh, you had a previous surgery.
Yeah, but I didn't really drink. There was no drinking. Oh yeah, so lap band was probably when I was 35. So probably, yeah. So I'm 48.
Which surgery did you have 4 years ago?
That was a gastric bypass.
Okay, so that makes sense. I didn't want to speak out of turn. When did you start drinking regularly and or heavily?
Say again now.
Can you not hear me again?
No, we
Yeah,
can hear you.
I
hear you.
can.
When did you start drinking regularly?
Probably 2 years after the gastric bypass. Yeah.
Okay, so here's what happens, man. Well, I'm going the wrong way. So alcohol is metabolized in the body at a steady state. Like everybody basically metabolizes alcohol at a certain rate, right? Mm-hmm. That's why if you drink a lot, the next day you wake up and you can blow greater than a 0.18, or you still register as drunk, because no matter what, the body just can't break it down any faster. The problem with people who have had your type of surgery is that more alcohol gets absorbed more rapidly. Mm-hmm. So you might be drinking like a person who hasn't had that surgery. You both are metabolizing it the same, but you have a lot more in you.
Yeah.
We also know that if you just put a mechanical barrier between you and your drug of choice, addiction is going to come out sideways. So whether it's people who have food addiction and they just get the surgery and they really don't know what is addiction. And then they turn to alcohol, which is by far the most common. But also, if somebody's an alcoholic and is like, okay, I'm just not drinking again, I'm just not drinking again, but absolutely does nothing to change their lifestyle from a, an alcoholic one to a recovery one, it can come out sideways with gambling or sex or food or marijuana. People love to go on marijuana maintenance programs, but anything that works in that same part of the brain is just going to get a check by what you prime by eating the way you ate.
I saw that in Marcus. So Marcus, if I could speak for you, but I see this a lot in other patients. And in our surgery realm, we call it cross addiction. So we take away food because you just can't eat that much food. You couldn't go to Uchi and have a whole big platter. So you find other ways to stimulate that dopamine. In the beginning, Marcus went crazy with the exercise. Like he just didn't stop. And I want everybody to exercise, but Marcus took it to a different level. He was going to do an Ironman. Then he was going to do, hey, Doc, you want to do 5 Ironman in 5 days with me? No, Marcus, I don't want to do 5 Ironman in 5. You want to bike across America with me? No, Marcus, I don't. So he did this kind of cross addiction. Then I think, Marcus, you started getting some injuries, and that's when drinking has come back on. Tell us what's been going on lately.
Yeah. So no, it was COVID. So I went through. I did Ironman Texas twice. I did the next year. I did. I raised like $100,000 for Ironman Foundation. I did Kona, and so I did Ironman Kona. During the whole time, I document the whole thing with the film crew. Getting ready for a deal. Then I did Ironman Arizona 2 years ago. 2000. What was it? 2019. We did Ironman Arizona, and then 2020 came, and we were going to do Texas again. Just gonna be full on. I was in full rant mode. I mean, when COVID happened, I was riding 60, 70 miles on the weekend, and I was running a half marathon, on training with with no stops. So I was pretty much on track. And the COVID happened, dropped everything. So then I just started focusing on work. Our CEO got fired, new CEO came in. I had to go to work. So I kind of just took all of that, extra that Marcus is, and I'm extra, what I'm saying? And just totally focused my whole marketing, that that's what I am, a marketer type guy, and big, I like big things. I like doing things big, and, jumped into reinventing how you weld pipe on a pipeline. And totally, 10 months ago, and it's not a big deal. I mean, you guys probably won't even understand what I'm saying, but 10 months ago, that was on a napkin. And, I've welded 6 miles of pipe on a job in Beaumont. And so, but during that time, now I'm kind of back in the mothership of where I cut my teeth of, making my money and that kind of thing. And I'm hanging around, this group of guys that's, pipeliners. And, I basically jump in that deal, and I'm on the pipeline. I'm in the oil field industry, and every night you're drinking, and every night you're doing, you're just, you're in it. You're in it to win it. And so, just started feeling like you take one, just drink one glass of wine, and you're instantly feeling that buzz, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be good. So COVID happened. It was gonna be locked down. I got 4 kids. I got 3 of them at home. And I went and bought a case of wine. I was like, hey, this is gonna be fun. Let's just. So I just, started, drinking a bottle of wine almost every night, going, I feel like crap in the mornings. I should be on the bike. I should be doing this stuff, but COVID's gonna end anytime. Never ended. Just hasn't ended. So just found myself where now you're like, hey, I'm tired of drinking wine. I'm gonna try some vodka.
Sure.
And then you're hit. I mean, you're just taking a hit. I mean, you're just feeling it. And I told Doc, I was like, hey, I'm quitting. I'm quitting. This is happening. I've done it. I've done some crazy shit, and I could do that again. And so I just knew that January 1 was going to be my last day of drinking, and it's not like I had to have a drink, but it was like I could tell, because knowing about not being the expert, not being a doctor on that looks at brain shit like you guys, but just knowing what I knew, I knew that, hey, the moment you really start thinking about alcohol before it's even time to even there's not even there, you may have a little bit of a problem going. And I can remember with food, that same thought, like, hey, what am I going to eat tonight? And I wasn't even hungry. It was just like, hey, what, well, let's go eat something fancy, or let's go do this. Let's eat something rich. And so, it's just noon would kick, and I'd be on the pipeline, or I'd be at the shop, and I'd be like, what kind of wine do I have at the house? And start kind of planning that out. I'm like, this is not right. So, just a couple of, just being who I am. I just said, hey, you know what?
Well, see, it's the being who you am. This is what I want to ask Jason, because this is an interesting. You remember that movie Awakenings?
Yeah.
Where Robert De Niro is the Parkinson. They come up with the medication. Was it Robert De Niro?
You're right. Remember. It was.
Yeah. So he had the Parkinson's. They came up with
right.
And Robin's right. And they, the Parkinson's got better, but then they went back to Parkinson's. It was very depressing. I feel that way with obesity. Like, I get someone thin and they're doing great. A couple of years later, they come back to see me and they're starting to gain weight again. They're starting to have some of the same problems they had again. In addiction, I'm sure you see this. And this is, I've heard discussed in the addiction world a bit. Once an addict, always an addict?
Yes. There are changes that are sort of permanent. Like, once they're there, they're always there. Like, I've been sober almost 18 years or 17 and a half years. No, there's no cure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's dormant, and it doesn't take much to turn the fire on. So, like, what Marcus was saying was very interesting, right? Like, that first drink that made you feel like you want a lot. The thing with alcoholics, addicts, is that one is too much because 1,000 is never enough. Now, Garth, when you or somebody like my wife, when they have a glass of wine, they feel satiated, right? You might enjoy it with dinner and it pairs well. When Marcus and I drink, it's not like a satiation. It's actual fight or flight. And this wiring, interestingly enough, we can see in very strong family histories, or once alcoholism has already been activated. And once it's activated, I mean, yeah, you could be in recovery, but there's no reversion. That is, there's certain types of alcoholics, and I'm pretty sure, Marcus, you're like me. It's like, yeah, you can't ever manage your drinking. Now, there are some people that develop alcoholism that looks like they can manage with some medicine help, with taking a naltrexone, but it's certainly not the majority of people. And I don't want to give the idea that, yeah, all you need is a medicine and then you can drink like a regular person, because it's not that easy.
Okay, so let's go back to Marcus here. So Marcus, and you, I think, Jason, you could kind of tell what Marcus is. Tough guy, leader, father figure. I'm going to do an Ironman. I'm going to tough it out. So now he gained some weight back, was drinking. And January 1st, he's like, that's it. I'm going to white knuckle it out of here. Good or bad reaction?
So, yeah, man, anybody can pause. Anybody can hold their breath in the dark. And hopefully you'll make it, right? Hopefully you will. But most of us can't do it that way with that's called a dry drunk. And it's at some point the, restlessness, irritability, discontentment generally come back in. And like when you had the obesity surgery and you jumped the second time and you jumped into exercise, I'd say, yeah, you probably overdid it because you're a deep end kind of guy, like me, like Eric Clapton, like other people. Like, it's go big or go home. There's no point dipping your toe in the shallow end. But with that said, it's great to find a substitute. You need to find a healthy substitute. So exercise is a great fill-in as long as it's done with moderation. People like Marcus and I can no more be a modicum of moderation than a fish can ride a bicycle, but we can try. And it's all about diversifying your portfolio. So exercise is going to be one substitute, but so will whatever, you've got to fill in the blank.
Well, tell us the positive mental. Tell us the positive mental attitude approach to it. Yeah,
right. So I don't teach positive mental attitude. That's like self-help ringing, but I do teach techniques like having a growth mindset or learning optimistic explanatory style and things that are evidence-based, that are ways to turn somebody who might be at the moment feeling helpless and prone to a relapse into feeling hopeful and staying in recovery. And, you know, the nuts and bolts are probably for a different time. But yeah, so that's just sort of what I do. And it takes a while, and it takes a while to unfold. And you give people tools, you let them go out in the world, practice a little bit. They stumble and they come back. And yeah, it's a process, man. It's like managing diabetes. You never get it licked with one doctor visit, right? It does take course corrections, and you know, recovery is definitely possible. And Marcus, I wish you all the hope all the luck in the world, and you could be successful. You know, you're a guy with a ton of willpower, and that's the strange thing, is that, like, you look at somebody like Marcus who's done all these Ironmans or triathlons, whatever, that 5 in a row, that takes willpower. It takes craziness, but it takes a lot of willpower. And for you to, like,
yeah, that we never really did that plan. That was just a
but yeah, it does take craziness, and
but a lot of willpower.
So what do you think about that? Are you like, how are you so what's it been? It's been a week or two, no drink?
Yeah, no, it's been 10 days and plant-based the whole time. You know, you know, alcohol, you know, I could tell, and I'm not saying, you know, there was a problem approaching. Maybe you can tell me this, but, you know, like I said, I never drank until I was 24. You know, really just started heavy drinking probably over the last 4 to 5 months, right? So it hasn't been like there's not.
Yeah, but it's sort of a cross addiction, right? Because so don't think about it being the alcohol, or, you know, at one point it was the food, the next point it was the exercise, now it's the alcohol. So it's not it's not the alcohol necessarily that we're focusing on. It's the addiction mindset. Jason, would you agree? Addiction mindset?
I think it's the addictive behaviors, right? Addiction is a lot of things, but a habit, it's certainly a bad habit.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So Garth's absolutely right. It doesn't matter what the substance or process is. If addiction is active, you know, over here it's food, and then wrong way. So like food, exercise, alcohol, like it just doesn't matter what it is. If it's active, man, it's active. And Garth's right on that.
Jason, what do you do? I mean, people didn't see you, and maybe you could talk about your lowest, but I saw you at your lowest, and it was scary. And I don't, you know, funny enough, I don't think I ever thought you would get out of it. Like, I was like, oh, this is going to be a lifelong problem. What did you do to get out of it? But more importantly, why have you never had a single lapse ever since? Are you doing daily self-care now, or what's your regimen to keep yourself? What could Marcus look to in kind of an example of what you do not to go back?
Yeah, so Marcus, that like bottom that you felt when you had to have the surgery, just that despair, that's where I was. And it was so bad. Like, yeah, Garth, I mean, you saw me at my absolute worst. And that was me not being able to just stop and stay stopped. I tried to, at that point, I was taking so many opiates and benzos that to stop was dangerous. I could have died. My body just wouldn't like let me do it. So I was just always sedated, and it was ugly. And it was so bad, Garth, that I don't have to like get on my knees on a daily basis. For me, the thought of like taking a pill or drinking is the same thing in my head as I might as well stick my face in a engine, you know, in a plane engine as it's going off a cliff, because there's nothing good waiting. Like, there would be no benefit. There's no upside. I suck at drinking. I suck at doing recreational things. So I just don't do it.
So it's a line in the sand type thing.
Yeah, it painfully won. That awareness, very painfully won.
You know, the other question I have for you, because I see people, we talk a lot about goals and goal setting. This is getting a little bit away from addiction. We all have our little, at least minor addictions, you know.
Well, not addictions. Even though you do a habit, it's not
habit.
Addiction is not an adjective.
Right. I got you. It's a disease.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me take it this way though. I talk to patients, and I struggle with the best advice on this kind of a ground. So there's the idea that for some patients, I feel a line in the sand is this. Like, have you ever heard the saying, doing something 99% is tough, but doing it 100% is easy? Because if there's just never, You've never heard that before?
Oh, I get it. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
get that.
Because,
Right.
like if I tell someone I want you to eat healthy 99% of the time, then they have like, some chips, and then they're like, that was my 1%, but well, maybe it was, I'll have chips again this afternoon, and then I'm going to go, but if there's a line in the sand that says no
Yeah.
chips,
Yeah.
is that better? Or then some people are like, well, if it's extreme, I can't do it, or I won't stick with it. So I need a little chips here and there, that kind of thing.
Okay. So it just depends on the individual. It depends on the individual. So yeah, if I have chips, I'm going to have those negotiations in my head where, well, that really wasn't 1%. It was like 0.8%. So I could stretch it out a little bit. And then, like, what was that thing, Body for Life, where there was like a cheat day? So there was a cheat day, right? And I would wake up in the morning on my cheat day and I would eat nonstop shit. And Garth, like halfway through me telling you all that I was eating, you're like, I really don't think that was the ethos of the cheat day. I think it's like to have a meal, like maybe at a Mexican restaurant, Jason. I'm like, oh, really? It's not to like go buy everything I've ever wanted in my life and eat it at one time. And then because I hate myself, like eat it again. Yeah. So some people say, oh, you have so much willpower because I don't drink. No, as long as I don't drink, I'm okay. But once if I have one, that turns on that craving for an unlimited amount. So yeah, that line in the sand is survival.
So Marcus, do you feel like, what's your plan of attack here? Are you going to go with the 99%, 100%?
No, it's a day by day deal. I think with me, I can remember back even before the weight loss surgery. I got hooked on Ativan. Right, I was having anxiety like at 22, 23 years old. Thought I was gonna have a heart attack because I was so big, right? And it was like, I'm gonna die of a heart attack. So went to the doctor, heart doctor. They did a heart cath. I talked him into that, and finally, like, no, your heart's perfect. What are you doing? You're crazy. So we're gonna give you Ativan, and just take one of these when you feel that way. So I remember doing Ativan for like starting off with like one at night, and then it would be like, I can remember like 2 years into it, which you should never take Ativan that long, I don't think, ever. But they didn't tell me how addictive it was. But I was taking 4 or 5 a day. And I was like, hey, I'm quitting. And I told a doctor friend of mine, I'm just quitting. He's like, dude, you can't quit that shit that way. You got to wean yourself off, and it's super hard. You need to probably check in somewhere and go get help. And I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. So I kind of started weaning back. So this whole thing of everything this doc saying, my dog is barking in the background, but the everything he's saying is relatable. So you can just see the traits of where I've been. I always go. There's always levels of different things that I've attached myself to. One thing that I love, one of the attachments that I love is I love helping people. Right. I put myself out there, with the following that I've got, with, the story that I have, all the footage that I've accumulated, climbing the mountains and, doing the things that I love, to do, all kind of just culminate around just trying to help people through the day to day, so, it was real vulnerable, probably, 2 weeks ago when I started talking about, hey, I'm not drinking. I can't remember a day in the last 4 months that I haven't drank except for 1 or 2 maybe. And, so looking at that going, hey, vulnerability is like, hey, Marcus is a superhero and he's done all these Ironmans. He's a badass. And, hey, let's be like Marcus and you can do anything you set your mind to. I mean, the Ironman world, that's kind of what I set myself up to be, I thought, and, now it's kind of like, huh?
You got to be careful of that, Marcus. I see this a lot, right? Where you become a hero to others, and you haven't completely healed yourself, if even you're ever completely healed. And then you have this added burden of wanting to help others and be an example to them, but yet struggling with your own problems. And you also got to remember, and I think Jason kind of hit on this, and maybe can again, but you do what you always done, you're going to get what you always got. So I would just caution you not to be like bullheaded, like I'm going to beat this because I'm Marcus Cook and I could beat anything. And maybe look at something else and realize, look, I got a problem and I may need some help in fighting it. I might not
no,
accept
and
the
that,
vulnerability
yeah,
to
no, that's
look for
true. Yeah, that's where I was going with it. So being vulnerable is like, hey, let's get on a podcast with with Doc and talk about
help.
drinking. With
That is
someone that I've
That
ever
is
met in my life. So I'm all for it. It's a deal of like, hey, I came to you to get help one time, and it led me to some badass stuff. So yeah, I believe that you meet people in your life and the puzzle pieces work themselves out of like why you met that person. You know what I'm saying? Like tonight,
yeah,
it was to meet your buddy here,
yeah.
and probably have a relationship with them, saying, hey, okay, so how do we really beat this thing to where this doesn't creep up in another area? And how can I help my kids if this is my dad was an alcoholic, so I'm all the things that kind of start ringing a bell, like, hey, you know what, this is, and the thing about it is that once you put yourself out there, I've gotten more DMs and messaging from people that are all in the space that I'm in. I'm like, hey, I've been drinking this whole year. I got to stop too.
Let me
So
tell you,
it's a real issue.
yeah, when I want patients to find a role model, I don't want them to find the ripped six-pack abs. Oh, look, for 6 months I did something and look how. I want them to find you, Marcus. I want them to find someone who's been in the trenches, knows that you could make these huge changes, but knows that the future is tough. And I always tell people this is not just weight loss, but life is a journey and not a destination. You're not going to get there one day and be like, oh, here I am, an Ironman, everything is good for the rest of my life. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, it's a real deal. It's a real deal. Go ahead, Doc.
Hey, you guys are both, I think, really experts on this topic, and so I want to kind of open it up. Jeff, we got a lot of people asking questions. You got some questions that you can throw us?
Here's one.
Okay.
12-step number.
All right. So, so this is a question about 12-step. Are you a 12-step member? What do you think of the 12-step program? Jace, what do you think of that?
Yeah. So when I got sober, I went to a gazillion 12-step meetings, and 12 steps sort of stays anonymous at radio, television, film. So I'm definitely not speaking as a member. I could tell you personally, there's evidence that it works, but it doesn't work for everybody. It does not work for everybody. In fact, most people don't get sober through a 12-step route. So that's why, like, when I treat people now as a little more wise, I don't just try to force one option on them, but I try to tease out like where are their values, what's going to work for them, and there's definitely options. So I think it works for some people, but I definitely think that in order to be effective, my range has to be a lot broader.
Right, and we do the same with surgery or weight loss in general. I could do a band, I could do a bypass, I could do a sleeve, we could do medical weight loss. Everybody's different, and everybody's going to have their kind of things. What other questions we got out there? I can't. Every weight loss surgery patient. Oh, does every weight loss surgery patient have transfer addiction? The numbers right now, basically in the research, is 9 to 10% of people will have a cross addiction. I think it's higher than that because sometimes we don't think of things as an addiction. Like we don't think that your huge shopping bill is an addiction, but it really can be. You may be getting these same dopamine responses from signing up on Amazon. And so it really is, it's a real problem with weight loss. And I do see with patients that they used to medicate with food. And now I take away that ability to medicate with food. And that's where the dopamine needs to be activated somehow. And it can be sex. It could be, we've seen some people with some really bad problems with sexual addiction, with shopping, with gambling. One patient had a terrible problem with gambling afterwards and never had any gambling issues before. So it really can transfer.
Don't really have anything else.
Is there? You don't see Adam on the D because
Adam, yeah, that's right.
Let's see if Adam's on here.
No.
And then I wanted to ask you, Marcus, you had talked about your father having addiction. Jason, I take it you see a lot of that running in families. Did your father do anything to kick it? How did it go with him?
No, he's yeah. I mean, he just got clean. He does everything in moderation. Now he's 77. Lives lives out in Canyon Lake, and I think he's a recreational kind of guy. He's a little bit of a hippie, but yeah, I mean, nothing's really crazy out of control with him right now. But yeah, I remember as a kid, he definitely had problems, going through some of the stuff, some of the drinking, issues, and then he became a preacher, that kind of thing. Anyway, that's kind of dad, but definitely knew that was in the family history of there was, some of the stuff that I was dealing with.
Which brings up the issue, Jason. What do you tell like people like Marcus who has a family? What do you tell them to do with the kids? Like, how do you prevent the kids from going down this pathway?
A great question. So Marcus, yeah, your dad had it, and you had a 60% chance of having it. The earlier somebody drinks in life, the quicker it can activate. So we try to get them to wait as long as possible. We don't know exactly what preventive measure works. Don't say no doesn't work. Dare increases use. And Garth, like you were saying, if I were to march somebody like Robert Downey Jr. in front of a bunch of like teenagers and let him tell his story of, hey man, I partied my butt off, I did drugs, sex, drugs, rock and roll, got absolution, and now I got an Oscar and I'm in every Marvel movie, then the kids want the projection of their life to mimic that exactly. So having somebody like Marcus who, yeah, I made it this far, I had a few steps back, and I'm still trying. Like, I'm imperfect, but this is how you succeed, because nothing works 100% all the time, right? Since we don't know exactly what's a foolproof way, because I'm sure there isn't one, is the best thing to do is talk to them, be completely transparent, right? Like, my kids know my story, and there is a pediatric addiction researcher who did this really cool thing with her kids. I don't know how old your kids are, Marcus, but I'm doing it with mine, and it sounds good. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of evidence yet, but I told them, if you can wait until you're 17 to try alcohol, I'll give you $1,000. My oldest one made it so far. My other one's 15. And I was like, and if you do any drugs, other drugs, because alcohol is definitely a drug. If you do any other drugs before you're 25, I'll kill you. But if you can wait until after you're 25, when the brain fully, develops, and the chance of developing addiction goes down tremendously, it's like, I'll give you 2,000 or 3,000. I don't remember what it was. And, it's pretty strong in my family. Sounds like yours too. I lost a brother due to complications of his food addiction. My brother Yale would starve himself. He was obese, and my mom rode his ass, and he would actually not eat for long periods of time. And what starvation does is it causes the heart to enlarge, and he had that, and he started passing out when he was in college, and then after he graduated law school, he passed away. But it was from food addiction and his solution to it during his formative years. And my kids know my story. They know the dangers of it. That doesn't mean that they're out of it. And, I'm not anti-alcohol. Like, my wife drinks, I benefit, but she's weird in my opinion, because she can have half a glass and put it down. I think she's crazy, because it's like, if I was an alcoholic, I'd drink all the time. Like, she's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my kids are 26. Really, no, showing no signs of any, any kind of issues with it. 26, 21, 18, and 14, and they all didn't drink till they're 21.
How's their weight?
My son Zachary, he's done a 30K running event. Then he did or 50K running event. And then he's done a half Ironman. So, they fluctuate up and down.
Pictures, Jason, because the whole family lost weight with Marcus. The whole family really lost a lot of weight with them following.
We all, think about it is the journey that I'm on, so I gained, the weight that I am with my skin and all that, I'm roughly, I think the lowest I ever got with everything was what was it, Doc? 235. And then I got the stomach off. I got my stomach taken off, and I was at 210. But it was really kind of an unhealthy 210 because I had an internal hernia. Got that fixed, and then so really where it was at 245 is kind of where I just sat. And that's kind of where I did all my Ironmans at, and then over COVID, I got to be like my heaviest was like 308, and now I'm down back to 300 over the last week and a half. And it's kind of like whenever I started going through how I did it, there was like, I had to realize there was a change that needed to happen. And then I set a goal of what I wanted to do. And then I got a team around me of accountability. And then I did the work, and then I reached the goal, and then I moved the goal. Well, I did that all the way from, I was 500 pounds all the way down to, whatever. And I did that from, the first, 5K turkey trot I did, to where, I ran half marathons, and then, I just ramped every distance of anything I did. So it's kind of like whenever I rein back in of like, hey, and I want y'all to know, it's not like a white knuckle, I'm going to do this. It's more of you've done some impossible shit. So use the same thing that got you there. And the thing, so I just kind of did those 5 steps, and it's simple. Hey, I have a problem. I know I gotta change. My goal is what? I'm not drinking for 30 days. Now, in my mind, every time I hit one of those goals, like that picture where me and Garth are coming across at Olympic and I'm holding my hand up, I wasn't really happy at that moment, because I was thinking about, what am I doing next? Like, what is the next thing I can do? Because I have to have something to do, and I want to do something. And, the accountability of, putting it up is like, hey, that's my, when you have 37,000 people following you, a lot of them are going to be haters, and a lot of them are going to be people that love you, and a lot of people are going through the same shit I'm going through, and
hey, Marcus, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So this goal setting and accountability and sort of evaluating, could you have applied that when you were 500 pounds to start the weight loss then?
Yeah. After learning that kind of thought process of how you dig out of a hole, and how I even apply that to where I'm at with work. Here I did here I have this invention that is, it's a hard thing to do. And, what I do, I got a goal. I got people around me that I know can achieve the goal. And then we do the work, so it's kind of like, I think so, I think, being plant-based.
Successful getting down. Where were you going with this, Jason?
So you had built an $18 million company from $5,000 before your surgery. So it's not like you're somebody who hadn't learned that they could be successful doing things. So I guess where I'm going with this is that, like, I think the obesity surgery, you woke up with the mindset that you're skinny, and you started behaving that way. And then, but like, there are a lot of people that couldn't, no matter what they do, they need that head start, right? They need that surgery, and then they can do it. But most of the time, like, Garth, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, they start putting on the weight, they don't have to wait until they're absolutely needing a whole nother surgery. Like, you can intervene at any point. And there's people that like, so the thing is like, when you start gaining the weight and you're drinking, Marcus, it's so easy to be like, well, I'm screwed. I feel bad about myself, and I'm going to drown how I feel. So even though you put weight on.
Right. So Marcus is doing the right thing, right? Marcus noticed. He called me up. He was like, oh, shit.
Right.
I've made a mistake, but I know how to get back. I know what I did, and I know how to get back. And that's the beauty of Marcus. A lot of people are doing exactly what you say, Jason, is where they're like, oh my God, I gained back some weight. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
This is all a failure. And they felt self-sabotaging. I think the goal setting it's such a anchor for people, and it is so important. I use it all the time now myself. And we always teach people what we call SMART goals. So you have to set very specific goals. So you heard Marcus talking about how he had a goal. Like, I remember when you were going through this, Marcus, you said, I'm going to do a sprint try. And then you and I are going to do an Olympic try. And then I'm going to do a Ironman. So instead of being like, oh, I'm going to do an Ironman and that's all I'm going to think about, you had these little specific goals that were measurable, that were attainable, because an Ironman wasn't yet attainable. Then you worked yourself up to your goals. And that's crucial for people. I think the other thing that Marcus did that I wish all my patients would do is, I don't feel like Marcus was that focused on the weight. He was focused on the goals. He was like, these are my goals. And you never talked to me about a goal weight. You were always talking to me about, my goal is to do an Ironman. My goal is to teach people to exercise. And that's really important too. it's important when you said, like, my goal is not to make someone weigh less. If you're going to run a marathon, if you're going to be in a triathlon, I don't want your goal to be you're going to run a marathon. I want your goal to be you're going to become a runner, or your goal to be I'm going to change my life such that the conception I have, because I don't think, Marcus, you ever thought of yourself as an Ironman. Now that is an essential part of who you are. And so you've got that kind of sense of being that anchor to go back to set goals with. And I think that's really important when you're goal setting in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember, and I think, for both of y'all, when I was 500 pounds, and I did my first Ironman, I went to Boulder, and we climbed we climbed two 14,000 footers in a day, right? And they were easy climbs, but it was like, I'm sitting on top of this mountain, drinking a cup of coffee, and just blown away that here I am, and I just climbed a mountain, which I had, whenever I was 500 pounds, I'd go rent Jeeps and I'd climb, I'd go in the mountains, and we'd try to go up, try to do as many Jeep passes as we could, because I couldn't get out of the car, but I just loved that view, And so here I am, I've climbed these mountains. And then, I can remember that was when, Hurricane Ike or whatever it was here in Houston. I can't remember which one it was, but it was the tropical storm. And, a week later, I come back to Houston, and I'm in a canoe, and we saved like 100 people, in the neighborhood right next to me. And so, in my mind, that was another thing that just snapped of like, I didn't know that me having goals to be and become an Ironman would help me pull, this family out of their house that's got waist high water, put them in a canoe and get them out of here, and had I not done the steps that I've done, could that have happened, and so, it's back to that puzzle piece of like, the vulnerability. And I'm not trying to be the superhero to anyone. I'm just trying to be the voice of, I am a human and you're a human. And if you're listening and you're having a problem, just know that you don't have to have that problem, because you're going to have problems. We're all going to have kid issues. We're all going to have spouse issues. We're all going to have, money issues. We're all going to have things that happen that you have to make decisions on to make you be a better person. But the more you're thinking that it's not the end, it's just a stepping stone to where you're going, the more you can come out of it, right? And I think that's the biggest part of me, and the reason why I was kind of going back to that earlier, of the vulnerability and the accountability, right? So here I am, 500 pounds, couldn't do anything, did all this stuff, got 37,000 people on Instagram, and now Marcus is drinking too much. But you know what? Marcus is letting you know that, hey, now I relate to whoever's watching that they may have a problem drinking, that, hey, we could get out of this. And the way I got out of everything that I've got out of everything in the past 4 or 5 years is I realized there was a problem. I got a goal to come out of that problem. I got a team of people around me that says, hey, you know what, Marcus, we ain't letting you do this shit. Stop drinking. And then I'm doing the work. And the work is, you know what, instead of, drinking, I'm going to go get on my bike, or instead of drinking, I'm going to read a book, instead of doing all these things that are occupying that time. Because, when I was getting off that Ativan, I had to think differently. And I remember that I had to, and it's not, and back, it's 5 months of drinking. It's not like I've been drinking for 4 years, but it was that feeling was starting to hit me, and I didn't like that feeling, because it was the same feeling. Well, no, it's just the same feeling of like, hey, this feels too good and it's too easy, and this is nice. This is a relief from the pressure of the COVID world that we live in.
Well, the COVID world has thrown us for a loop. I think we have a couple more questions. I don't want to hold you guys too long. It's been an excellent talk. You guys have really hit all the topics I wanted to hit. Can I stop my food addiction, especially at night before bed? Or how do you stop it? Yeah, I mean, look, so, and Jason, we talked about it. So with food, it's a little bit complex, because there is a physiologic component to it. Like, you could stop drinking, right? You could just say, I'm not going to drink anymore. But with food, you got to eat. There's also a physiologic. So we talked about dopamine driving you to want alcohol, but there's a very primitive part of your brain and your brain stem that drives eating. And we are designed to eat. Our bodies didn't, evolution didn't care if we were fat. It just cared that we got enough food in order to procreate and live through a cold winter. And so we still have this hardware, and that hardware secretes ghrelin that makes you hungry. Your fat cells secrete leptin. If you start losing weight, the leptin drops, and your brain's like, oh my God, I'm in a starvation mode. So it is difficult. What I tell people in that situation is, first of all, like Marcus was saying, and like Marcus did, you got to become a different person. So a lot of people feel trapped by these, I guess,
habits.
Jason, you don't want to call it an addiction. Yeah, I'll call it habits. I don't want to call it an addiction, but trapped by these habits, because you think of yourself as, like, for instance, I'm not a person who likes plants, or I'm not a person who exercises. And so you've built this wall around yourself where really the biggest habit you got to quit is that habit of being you, and realize there's another person out there. One of the beauties I get in my job is I get to see people like Marcus completely reinvent themselves. So you got to get a new identity of someone who can do these things, who has done these things. So you have that to rely on. Then you've got to set very specific goals, like very specific. I like the 100%, like we were talking about before. Line in the sand, I'm not eating past 7 o'clock. I'm just not doing it. I am not going to eat past 7. I'm going to eat up to certain times at regular intervals. I'm not eating past 7 o'clock. I will drink tea. I will have, there's a great book called Beck's Diet Solution. Judith Beck is one of the, do you know Judith Beck, Jason? Yeah, she's a cognitive therapist. Yeah. And so she talks about having if-then situations. So if it's 7:30 and I'm hungry, then I'm going to do this. Go for a walk, read a book. I tell people you could eat a pickle. It's 0 calories, and usually that does it. Or an apple. You could say, okay, if I'm really dying, I could do these. You could drink tea. But you come up with an if-then scenario so that you always feel in control. What you don't want to feel is out of control. When you feel out of control, that's when you really start getting back into those bad habits. But I see people kick these habits all the time. I see people like Marcus, who's going to kick it again. And I see people like Marcus, who become Ironman and become people they never thought they could be before. Anything you guys would add to that?
I would say just one thing. What you said was perfect. So I would mirror that. And once you do something for 90 days, it's a lot easier to do on the 91st day. So good habits are really hard to start. So yeah, the idea of, not eating at night during the witching hour, we called it. That's when most people do their drinking and binge eating. There's that, binge eating disorder. A lot of times it's right before people go to bed, or it's at night when you're sort of the craziness of life, the distractions are gone and you're there with yourself. But if you, like what Garth said, absolutely, man, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And be that type of person, but just set yourself those little specific goals. But also remember, like, okay, I'm going to evaluate on day 91 and I'm going to really see if it's easier, because once you start to get in the habit, man, now you're doing it and it's easier momentum, but it sure is hard to start. So my heart's out to you, but just, you could do it. Like, why not you, right? You have all the same machinery we have.
Exactly. We have some more questions here.
Marcus could read it there. Only when I'm with Dr. Garth and he talking to him.
So no.
No, he's there.
Yeah.
No.
And so Jason, when you do therapy with people, do you is it intensive? You're not doing psychoanalysis, is it?
No,
you
have Jungian.
Yeah, so not young.
So most of what I do is inpatient, but I do have clients that I work with and kind of get them through the program. Like they don't pay doctors through insurance to do what I do, like the positive psychology stuff. Unless I'm writing a script or seeing somebody in 10 minutes, there's like no reimbursement. So I do have private clients and I do this. I work with a lot of athletes also because of the substance abuse, but not only that, but because, their friends tell them, and a lot of what you're talking about, a lot of mindset things applies to, if you make a mistake on the court or once your career is over, the things that we tell ourselves is really the most powerful determinant of what brings happiness at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean, I don't sit down and look for Jungian shadows and, do Freud stuff, but I do like, I believe that the past
a lot of times has to be uncovered and all that, but the past is best as a guidepost rather than a hitching post. And I like to give people tools now and working for the future.
That's fantastic. Hey, Jason, what are your books so people can look out for your books if they're interested? Tell us what your 2 books are and what do they offer to people? Who should buy them?
So When the Servant Becomes the Master is the first one. Its second edition came out like last year or the year before. I don't know. You know, the weird thing about COVID is like my temporal knowledge is skewed. Like you could tell me it's any day of the week, any day, and I'll believe you. So so When the Servant Becomes the Master is a kind of explains what is addiction. And it talks about food addiction, but it's really kind of like a good reference book, and it's written for everyday people. And then there's the Positive Recovery Daily Guide. And if you want something that will boost where you find human happiness, so something to boost either positivity, engagement, relationship meaning, or achievement on a daily basis, you start on day 1 when you pick it up, and it's really best done with a partner. But it's hard to do because I had to make it that way so that it's going to be worthwhile to repeat it year after year. So it's called Positive Recovery Daily Guide, When the Servant Becomes a Master.
And those are both available on Amazon.
Right.
And Marcus, people can find you on Big to Little.
Big to Little. That's it. Big to Little.
At Big to Little on Instagram and Big to Little on Facebook too, right?
That's right.
All right.
Put
Well,
links in the description.
and we'll put links in our description that will be on my website and on the different social medias. I thank you guys a lot. That was really an awesome conversation. I thank you guys for being vulnerable and sharing your experiences. I know it's kind of a private issue that we bring out into public, but I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I love you both.
Love you too. Marcus, nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
All right.
Good to see you guys.